Hello everybody, and welcome to Paper Pitfalls. In this video series, I'll be addressing common mistakes in academic writing. Now, in my time as a writing instructor, trust me, I've seen it all. And one of the most common issues in writing by far is wordiness. But what is wordiness? And here some people will sometimes wonder, is it just having a piece of writing that's long? And the answer is no, it's not just having a long piece of writing. You can have a very long piece of writing, even an entire book, that is not wordy. Rather, what wordiness is about is having unnecessary words. A piece of writing is wordy to the extent that it features words serving no purpose. For example, consider this sentence. At this point in time, others' decision to give to charity is positively impacting people all over the globe. Now, even though this is just one sentence, there's a good deal of wordiness here. Here are a few ways we could shorten this sentence. First, instead of starting the sentence with "at this point in time," we can simply say "now." Similarly, instead of saying "others' decision to give to charity," let's simply replace it with "charity." Meanwhile, "is positively impacting" can be replaced with "helps," while "people all over the globe" can be replaced with "people everywhere." Making these replacements, along with moving the "now" to a slightly more natural position, leaves us with this. Charity now helps people everywhere. In fact, we can tune up the sentence even further by removing the "now." Charity helps people everywhere. This revised sentence captures the same idea as the original, in about 1/5 the length. Granted, this savings might not seem like a big deal when we look at that sentence in isolation, but the trouble with wordy writing is that it's almost never a matter of a single sentence, but of many sentences strung together across an entire paper. And having to read several pages of wordy writing is just one of those things no one wants to do. Out of respect for your reader's time and energy, you should strive for crisp, concise prose. Another problem with wordiness is that it prevents you from making the most of your writing. For instance, imagine that you're assigned a 4-page paper. If your writing is filled up with unnecessary words, you're not going to have as much space for words that are necessary, and your exploration of whatever issue you're writing about will be shallower as a result. Now, don't get me wrong, it's fine to clarify your ideas. After all, sometimes ideas need to be clarified or explained, or even simply emphasized. Just because you take a moment to write something like, "Here's what I mean by this," or "that is to say," or "let me explain," doesn't mean you're being wordy. Remember that wordiness comes about when the words in question serve no purpose, as in our earlier example. Clarifying and explaining are important purposes, so they shouldn't be conflated with wordiness. So how do you go about becoming a less wordy writer? I find that one of the best ways is to practice scanning your own writing for wordy areas, and to try to come up with ways of shortening them. It also helps to consider other people's feedback on your writing. Often they'll be able to find wordy spots that might be harder for you to notice. Lastly, it helps to consider examples of wordy prose from other people's writing, and to practice shortening them. To that end, let's look at a few more examples of wordy sentences, and see if we can improve them. First, let's consider an example from a student paper about the ethics of playing violent video games. The video games and how close they are to what transpires in real life is actually really far off. Immediately, we should see that the "actually" and "really" are unnecessary, so let's remove them. The video games and how close they are could also be shortened to "how close video games are." We might then remove "what transpires in," since that's not needed either. What we then have is "how close video games are to real life is far off." This is better, but still a bit wordy and awkward. We could change it to "video games are far from real life," which is better still. But notice, we can make this even briefer by simply saying, "video games are unrealistic." There, that's all we need. Also, one cool thing that I thought I'd point out here is that, just as in our previous example, the original sentence here is 19 words, the revised sentence is 4 words. Now, I promise I did not plan it that way, it just naturally happened that way. Anyway, I thought that was a cool coincidence. Here's a further example of a wordy sentence. It was proposed by Billy that people should formulate their expressions more clearly than often occurs at present. Now for some revisions. First, let's replace "it was proposed by Billy" with "Billy proposed that." Next, we can replace "formulate their expressions" with "express themselves." Finally, it's simply unnecessary to end the sentence with "then often occurs at present." We can take that whole part out. The revised sentence so far, then, is this. Billy proposed that people should express themselves more clearly. In fact, depending on the context, we might be able to shorten it even more, to something like, Billy proposed that people should be clearer. In either case, notice how much simpler and cleaner a sentence that is than the original. Again, there's ultimately no substitute for practice. So keep trying. Put yourself in wordiness detection mode. Try to identify and shorten any wordy spots in your own writing. If you do this often enough, you should see your writing ability gradually improve. Well, that's all for today. Good luck with your writing, and thank you for watching.